Hello, my name is Lydia, and in the following few minutes, I, along with my assistant, Mr. Mabel here, and some helpful volunteers, am going to help you dive into Adam Smith's views on wealth and trade. So let me start with some basic biographical information on Smith. He lived from 1723 to 1790 in Scotland, meaning that his work was originally published in English. He started studying at the University of Glasgow at the age of 14. He was like a young nerd, and he later attended Balliol College in Oxford. He started his philosophical career then, giving lectures in Edinburgh, and he went on to write books about economic theories, traveling, and he basically was an old white guy who made philosophical history. No one else, to our knowledge, had written about the economy in this way before he had. To help us situationally and historically posit Adam Smith, we can compare his lifetime to those of other philosophers that we've already read about this semester. As I just explained, Smith was alive during most of the 1700s. He was alive over a century later than Descartes was, and he also came after Spinoza and Leibniz had already died. Hume, Berkeley, and Kant were alive around the same time as Smith was, and actually Smith and Hume were very good friends, and as they were both Scottish philosophers, they congregated in the same social clubs frequently. Additionally, while Smith and Kant weren't BFFs like Smith and Hume were, Kant did read at least one of Smith's published texts. We're going to focus on his theories of division of labor and the invisible hand, how they connect, and my personal reactions to them. We're going to start with Smith's idea of division of labor. This is a proposed, more efficient method of producing goods. We're going to use some volunteers to simulate a real-world situation where this works better, but allow me to just explain the idea first. So according to Smith, the old system of having each person produce an item from start to finish is outdated and inefficient. Alternatively, we should divide the process among people, so each person is responsible for a single step for every single product, rather than being responsible for all the steps in a portion of products. His argument can be presented in premise-conclusion format as the following. The first premise is, if a system allows for faster production and improvement in the production process, it is a more efficient system of production that should be implemented. Premise 2, division of labor allows for faster production and improvement in the production process. Thus, the conclusion, division of labor is a more efficient system that should be implemented. So this is currently used in assembly lines as factory workers globally engage in divisions of labor. Another example follows, and you'll see several beloved volunteers work to construct identical wooden houses. Just for some background on these wooden houses that they're building, my dad just cut out these wood pieces and gave each person a set of pieces for their house. They also all got a blueprint for the design and a foundation square so they can get the sizing measurements right. Everyone was also taken through a demonstration of how the house construction works, so everybody knew how to build the house prior to actually starting. As you can see, there's obviously a time break where some people finish their houses sooner than others, and in the real world, these people would obviously move on to building other houses so that there isn't like this gap in productivity. We only had a certain number of houses, however, and we're just averaging the productivity among the workers, so for the sake of this example, we can just pretend that this gap doesn't exist. So that video there was sped up, but it took the workers around 2.5 minutes to construct those 5 houses. Let's see how that time changes with the division of labor. So to be honest, this attempt was the second try at this division of labor process. We ran into the productivity gap problem again, as workers who were constructing the roof in the last bit of the houses spent the first half of the period doing nothing, while the workers at the beginning had the same lack of productivity at the end. So to account for this, we had everyone start with a house in front of them that was already constructed up until the point of their step in the process. So everyone basically started on their step and then moved on. It's difficult to measure the number of houses produced in this time as a result of how we had to set this up, but we're just going to average the number of houses produced per minute to compare this to when we didn't have a division of labor implemented. So upon calculating the average number of houses produced per minute in each group, the first group had a result of 1.98 houses per minute, and the second had about 2.9 houses produced per minute. This may not seem like much of a difference, but when we consider the number of products made in factories each day all around the world on assembly lines, we come to the realization that small quantitative improvements turn out to have very large productivity results. As we can see, the system is faster and much more efficient. Also, as we continued, the volunteer workers in the second group managed to improve their individual steps and find ways to make their portion of the process more efficient, which certainly makes sense per Smith's argument that I told you about earlier. For another example about this process, in his short piece titled I, Pencil, Leonard Read, a libertarian writer from the 1900s, shared the example of manufacturing a pencil. We cannot completely comprehend how many people are involved in the material collection, manufacturing, and distribution of a single pencil. It's impossible for someone to create a pencil start to finish entirely on their own, and thus a division of labor is not only more efficient for the production process, but it's actually necessary. So we've discussed some of the benefits of this system, but there are certainly drawbacks as well. Artisan or handmade, intricately designed products obviously cannot be produced with a division of labor on an assembly line. Imagine Bob Ross trying to use an assembly line for one of his paintings. If you're wanting something that's unique, it's not going to go well. Imagine if these houses were uniquely designed instead of mass-produced. The assembly line then wouldn't work. Additionally, a division of labor system is limited by the size of the market. While this may shorten production times and increase the number of items that you're able to produce, it's not worth doing so if the demand isn't high enough to warrant such high levels of production. So here we have 8 houses available for sale, but only 2 people in the market are interested, so the division of labor isn't worth it. Smith also argues that not only are divisions of labor efficient systems that should be implemented, but they're also going to establish themselves spontaneously as a result of people operating in their own self-interest. In other words, because people naturally want to maximize profits and be as successful as possible, they're going to work as efficiently as they can in order to achieve this. This directs us to our discussion on Smith's theory of the invisible hand. So, according to his theory of the invisible hand, Smith says that society as a whole benefits as a result of individuals acting in their own self-interest. Because everyone is naturally driven to maximize their own profits, under a free trade system, everyone ends up better overall. Let me demonstrate how this can happen, and then we'll discuss how interference from the government can wreck this system, according to Smith. So first, let's suppose that my friends here, Mitchell and Yana, they each have a product to trade or sell. So Yana has apples and she wants oranges, while Mitch has oranges and he wants to add apples to his food pile. Thus, when they trade, they're mutually benefiting from the exchange. We'll show numerically how this can work out and end in a surplus for both of them. Yana has 4 apples and Mitch has 10 oranges. So Mitch and Yana trade. Yana gives him 1 apple for Mitch's 3 oranges, and they both get what they want, with Yana having an extra apple and Mitch having an extra 2 oranges. So they both have a surplus of their own fruit, which of course is beneficial to them, on top of them already mutually benefiting from the trade. So Smith says that this is how trading should be. Unfortunately, he condemns government interference in a trade. Let's see how this can affect the way the trade goes down. Let's suppose the government limits trades to 2 oranges per trade. So Yana and Mitch do 2 trades of 1 apple for 2 oranges. Yana ends up with 1 less apple and 1 more orange, but is less efficient because there were 2 separate trades. In this example, we don't see a huge difference in the fruit results of the trade. However, when considering over time how this lack of efficiency can affect time and money constraints, we can see Smith's argument about government involvement. Again, while this example is not the perfect illustration, other forms of government interference like tariffs can cause trading parties to benefit less from trading as well. However, in opposition to Smith's view on government interference, we can consider the difficulties that developing nations face in this type of system. Let's use my lovely volunteers again for another illustration. Jessica here is selling apples, Mitchell is selling applesauce, and Yana is selling apple pie. Yana and Mitch both need Jess's apples for their products, so they trade and they take apples from her and in exchange give her the produced apple items. But let's suppose that Jessica actually represents a developing nation. She has to trade with Yana and Mitch, but they don't owe her anything. They give her very small amounts of their apple pie and applesauce in exchange for all of her apples. As a result, she's exploited and taken advantage of, and the trade is very much not fair. So I've already shared some objections to both the division of labor system and Smith's advocacy for free trade, but allowed me to further elaborate on my thoughts in response to Smith's theories. In considering his theory of the invisible hand, I find that some ideas are specifically lacking. To start, call me an optimist, but I do believe in at least some level of altruism that penetrates human nature. To claim that humans always just act in their self-interest is a bit too confining of an idea for my taste. I believe that humans can, and do, sometimes act in the interest of others. Additionally, I find the lack of a discussion on equality and fairness in trades interesting. As I demonstrated above using my example of trading with a developing nation, Smith does not seem to account for inequality and exploitation in exchanges. He seems to accept that inequality is just something we have to accept if we're going to trade effectively. Inequality permeates every aspect of the economy, and I don't feel that Smith addresses this concern enough in his theories. we have to consider that he was writing in a completely different time period. So when we posit his ideas in today's society, we may find that these concerns are really valid now. Overall, however, Smith's contributions to the economy are incredibly important, and I do think that he was really an innovative thinker for his time. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned something more about Adam Smith's views of wealth and trade.